So I said we'd be getting our hands dirty here by talking with the IUP Anthropology Department. That's just a figurative way of speaking. He got his hands dirty. I did not get my hands dirty and will not. He's Ben Ford, IUP Anthropology Department. Good morning.
Good morning.
This is a wonderful thing that we were reading about earlier. IUP put out a release earlier this week talking about what you've been doing this summer.
You've been busy.
Yeah. And right here in Indiana County.
Yeah, just down on the Conemaugh.
Yeah. It's called Newport Village. Is that what it was called?
The village was, the town or the village was called Newport, and now it's an archaeological site.
Yeah. So let's talk about that and what the Anthropology Department has been doing this summer.
Sure. So we had an archaeological field school there, and so this is a 4-credit class where students learn how to do archaeology. It's it's sort of the on-the-job training aspect of our program, where they learn to actually find and excavate sites and to identify artifacts. And so it's the primary goal is to train young archaeologists so they can go out and get jobs, because there are actually quite a few jobs doing archaeology in the private sector and for the state. And so that's our primary goal. The site itself was a river town that was founded right around 1787 to facilitate getting goods and raw materials kind of out of Indiana County and down the Conemaugh to Pittsburgh.
So when you do a site such as this, you get an idea of what life was like, obviously, but also of who these people were. Who were doing things. And for you as an anthropologist, this must be pretty exciting.
Yeah, it's really, really cool, actually. It's a lot of, I got into archaeology to do archaeology. So to go out and to find evidence of these people's lives and to sort of understand where they were getting goods from, what kind of things they were eating, what they were eating them off of, how they were interacting with different communities in the area is really pretty cool. And what makes this site even more interesting is that in addition to the sort of Euro-American stuff we found that we were expecting, we also found evidence of Native Americans having lived on that same piece of land probably millennia or thousands of years earlier. And so it's that whole transition and the various peoples who have lived in Indiana County through time, I think, is a really important part of the story.
We, as lay people, we don't have the inside knowledge that you do and that you're teaching your students about how archaeological digs yield so much evidence and how you're able to construct the life of people and a community. But take us through a thumbnail of how that process unfolds.
So our first step is to get a sense of what's there, to either find a site or to get a kind of an idea of what the boundaries of it are. So for that, we dig a series of small holes relatively quickly. We use a shovel, and they're all square holes, and they're all pretty controlled, but we do them relatively fast. And so we did 60 of those at this particular site. And then based on what we find in those in terms of artifacts, but also evidence of structures, evidence of hearths, evidence of people just living on the landscape, we put in larger 1 meter by 1 meter, what we call excavation units, that we dig much more slowly and much more carefully to capture not only the stuff that we find, the artifacts that everyone likes to see, but also evidence of any structures that were there, evidence of how people changed the landscape, and evidence of what their lives were really like. And so by looking at the soils, the artifacts, what we call features, which are man-made places, basically, we can put together a lot about their life. We never know everything, but we often can learn quite a bit about them.
You mentioned the Native American finds. Is depth of the dig a big indicator of a second civilization, if you will, living there?
It can be. At Newport, we found Native American stuff very shallow. It's a fairly shallow site. There's been erosion there in some places, and so a lot of things are very close to the surface. But also being along the Conemaugh, there is flooding. So in some cases, yes, the deeper things are, the older they are, because every time the river floods, it deposits a little bit more soil on top, and so you can get things buried pretty rapidly that way. So we do look at depth, but it's not the only indicator of how old something might be.
Yeah. And the differences between what you're finding that you identify as Native American versus the later generation, the later culture, what were some of the differences that you found in I assume it's materials that you find?
Yeah, largely, yeah. The European stuff is primarily ceramics, so different types of ceramics that were made either in the Pittsburgh area, in the Indiana County area, because there were some kilns here, or much farther afield, Philadelphia, or in many cases coming out of England. So those are indicative of European Americans living at the site. The Native American materials tend to be made out of stone, so they're making stone tools, and we're finding evidence of those stone tools. But a lot of what we find is that we call chipping debris. It's the little pieces of stone that you would sort of knock off as you're making a stone tool. It's sort of like whittling, right?
Yeah,
Where when you whittle, you end up with a lot of debris. In this case, it's not wood; it's stone debris that we find a lot of.
Yeah, so it's not shavings; it's more chips.
Right.
Okay, we're talking with Ben Ford, and he is working, of course, at IUP. But he had the opportunity this summer to head down to a section for folks who don't know exactly where is this village located.
So we never talk about exactly because we try to protect some of these locations.
Sure.
But it's along the Conemaugh near where the Black Lick comes in, and the property is actually owned by the Army Corps of Engineers as part of flood control, and so it's illegal for anyone to collect or take anything from that property because it's federal property without a permit.
How did you identify it as a site that you wanted to explore?
So it's a known place. I mean, Newport was important to the development of Indiana County, to the development of Western Pennsylvania, actually, as a major transportation node. So folks have always known it's there, and the Indiana County Historical and Genealogical Society has a file that was very helpful in terms of knowing more about it and beginning our research.
As a community, it was relatively short term, wasn't it?
Right, yeah. It was there from, say, a little before 1790 until probably by 1830. It was on a pretty serious decline.
Talk about the students that you have working with you, because I would guess for them, for you get to see a light go on in them when they discover something, when they really understand the ramifications of what they found. Yeah,
field school is sort of a make or break for a lot of students. So for many students, this solidifies that this is what they want to do. This is how they want to spend their careers. For other students, it's valuable because it lets them know that maybe field work is not where they want to be. They want to work in a museum or an archive. And so it's really a helpful experience. But for a lot of the students, it's that to see the things they've learned about in class, to make them real, and to hold these objects that are hundreds or thousands of years old is really I think an enlightening experience for them. And then we work with them and talk to them about not only how old they are, but what they mean and where they may have come from, what they can tell us about people, and that makes the archaeology very much part of anthropology.
I'm interested in the site being in Indiana County as well. Our family, we do historical vacations every year, a lot of them. And I recall last year or the year before, I can't recall which year it was, being at Monticello, and there was a dig going on there. And you think of that, okay, well, what could they possibly learn about Monticello, because it's so well known and so well traveled and so much visited. This is different, isn't it, for Indiana County?
It's different, but also I think similar in that I love archaeology because archaeology is democratizing. So the history often talks about rich folks, often the people who wrote, which often tend to be rich white men. Archaeology covers everyone because everyone makes trash. Everyone leaves a mark on the landscape. And so at Monticello, they're often focusing on the enslaved African-American population because we don't know as much about them from the historical record. And at Newport, we do have some historical records, but there's a lot of people, there's 30 families that live there that we don't know really that much about. And so archaeology is great to sort of supplement the historical record to give us a more complete, I think a more, like I said, democratic view of what the past was really like.
Mm-hmm. Some of the findings that you've learned about the Native Americans by digging at this site and discovering them all over again. What were some of the more exciting ones to you?
It looks like they were using it as sort of a camp area. So there are some springs there. You got the Conemaugh, which would have been a natural thoroughfare for them. So the same thing that brought Europeans to this site, which was using the Conemaugh as a highway, Native Americans would have been there using it for the same purpose. And so they seem to have been coming sort of through the area, at least this particular site, sort of transitory, camping on a few flat spots that were there. and it looks like they were using it over and over and over again through time. So again, for me, the exciting part is that continuity of human use that we don't always think about, and that the fact that people keep coming back to the same spot is, to me, a really interesting part of our human nature.
Was the Conemaugh much different generations ago, centuries ago, than it is now?
I mean, it's flood controlled now, so it's a different river than it was a long time ago. It tended to run higher and lower in the past, so it would have much higher water and then much lower water because it wasn't controlled, and it's moved. I mean, it is eroding one bank and building another bank, and so it would have been in a similar location, and somebody probably would have recognized it, but it definitely is different.
Your department at IUP, let's talk about it a little bit. This might be one of those majors that kids are considering that we might not find out in the mainstream, because right now everything is about STEM. But this is a more traditional major. Talk about how the department operates at IUP and the kind of kids that you get.
Sure, we get all types of students. With archaeology and anthropology more generally is a STEM field. Actually, we teach a lot of math, and there's a lot of potential for chemistry and science in archaeology, anthropology. But we're also a humanity in that we study people and what it is to be human. And so we actually are sort of a bridge field in many ways that pulls in students that like the hard sciences but want to apply them to people, students that like the humanities but want some rigor to how they study them. And so it's a really nice in between for a lot of students. Students who want to study the past, students who want to fix the future, all really fit within anthropology. And we offer a diversity of classes to sort of help those students find their path. And one of the things we're really proud of is that we offer a lot of practical skills that help them get jobs, so that they leave as anthropologists and apply that anthropology to whatever job they end up in, and they find jobs.
I know the Newport site had some wonderful support, and those types of grants or funding sources that you find are extremely important in the field, aren't they?
They are, and both funding and permission, right? So a big part of being at Newport was permission from the Corps of Engineers, as well as from the PA Game Commission, who actually leases the property. And so without their support, we couldn't have done it. So we're very appreciative of both those institutions.
Is this a one summer event, or do you see it unfolding over the course of several seasons?
We hope to go back. We do a field school every summer. It's part of our training for our students. And we do alternate, though, between a pre-contact Native American field school and a more historical archaeology post-contact field school. And so this year was the historical archaeology. Next summer, we will likely work at a site called Squirrel Hill, which is also in Indiana County, at a pre-contact village site. So actually probably more people than were at Newport, but before Europeans arrived. The following year, I hope to go back to Newport. So I do hope to keep going back here for a couple of years, because it's really an exciting site.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to thank you for coming in and visiting with us today. This has been fun.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
It is the voice of Indiana County, WCCS AM 1160, 101.1 FM.